Yes? Are you going to play the tune so I can get a little warm up?
Vibesy.
He worked hard night and day as the weeks went past, pounding and beating off metal for his fancy mask. He had no jobs, but he used to bet, oh my God, on the horses, cause dock work was hard to get. But his luck was bad, he was in debt. For smoke he couldn't buy a cigarette. Expensive cloth he had to get on trust, because playing mass to him was a definite must. Smokey Joe play a big time mass, purple velvet and shining brass.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome to the backyard in Belmont and welcome inside the Wajang discotheque. Today we are in the House of Music. I belong to the House of Music. What is this thing? Well, I belong to the House of Music takes its name from the lyric book of the great, great, great Winston Bailey, The Shadow. And in this series, we talk with people who are makers, doers, everythingers, about the music of Trinidad and Tobago that has shaped their work, their process, their lives. And inside the House of Music, inside the Wajang discotheque this evening, we're so pleased to have with us everything Ararian. That goes from ex-golfer. Do you still golf? Ex-golfer, quadrista, photographer. You might know her work specifically as a photographer, but she's also one of these everything Ararians, Maria Nunes. Welcome inside the House of Music. One of the people who belong to the House of Music.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you.
Welcome, Compare.
Thank you. Oh gosh, I'm so glad to be here. Truly.
Yeah. I'm really glad that you're here as well. And you know, this time, this carnival, not carnival time, when we kind of going through a Tabanca, we are missing that world of our own. That place that is sometimes liminal, that is sometimes very real and terrifying and beautiful. That carnival space. We're not gonna cry yet. We're not gonna cry yet.
I have a big tissue in my back pocket.
The tears will probably come at some point because for people like you and me who are involved in that other side of the carnival that in some ways is very unseen. And in some ways you have taken a responsibility for us to see again. We are the ones who missing and feeling it the most. I mean, yes, I love a soca fete. Yes, I love, the energy of the time, but there's something magical about bending a corner and seeing Andy Patrick walking towards you. Kobe. Be careful. Watch yourself. That energy of the space, that electricity, I still feel it, but it's not the same this year. It's not the same this year.
And you know what I miss the most is the panyard, because all of these weeks, from since in late December, certainly early January, you're finding yourself in the panyard. You're driving on the road, you don't mean to go in the panyard, you're hearing the pan, you turn around the car, you're going in the panyard.
Yeah.
and you're feeling the night air in the Panyard. A friend of mine was telling me, actually, that is how you know it's panorama time, when you're feeling cold in the night. And
You're taking due.
you're taking due, you know? So, to be honest with me, I would say that was my first thought about what I feel right now that I miss the most, you know? Because that creates the energy, you know, it's like this whole environment of music, and I really, really miss that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. The pan is the jambi that is underneath everything, eh?
Yeah, boy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So.
Whew, okay. But we ain't started ball yet.
No.
Let's play the first piece of music and we'll talk about the first piece of music and then we'll talk about Riverview Bar.
Okay. okay.
First tune. Big sound of John Buddy Williams. Last night, the landlord nearly killed me. Originally performed by Lord Christo. What memories does that song conjure for you?
Well,
especially of Riverview Bar.
But first of all, just for the audience who know I wasn't born then yet, okay? But I grew up with my dad. One of the first albums that I remember in the house was Calypso by John Buddy Williams. That album was 1973, so I was born when that album was released. And I grew up with that sound. My dad took me by John Henderson to learn quattro chords, by Fred Alcazar, La Petite Musicale, to learn quattro chords, you know? So that sound that we just heard there in that piece, to me, I don't know, I always feel like I was born hearing it, you know? Even though, to be honest, I can't say that I was hearing it in my house all of the time, but somehow I feel like it's in me, you know? And you talk about Riverview Bar. So, of course, that is the bar that my grandfather owned. I mean, I always proudly say I'm a descendant of a rum shop. Right? And
no shame in that game. No shame in that game.
No shame. And his bar was Riverview Bar in what the Quasi in the Y, you know, that very well-known spot that became, it was various things after. As a child, I knew it was Akbar Ali's.
Yes.
Then it was Courts.
Yes.
Then in more recent years, it was a Miss Marianne casino bar in Wenbach.
Yes.
And interestingly, the look of the building remained the same. You know, and even now that they have renovated, they kept the building frame, the roof line, you know.
Yes.
So that, I always, like my grandparents, and my parents are buried in the Sawan Cemetery, you know. And my father grew up telling me about coming to school in Port of Spain on the train, you know. So that barn, when I found this postcard one day when I was at the National Library in the Heritage Collection, doing some research for a project on the introduction of universal adult suffrage in Trinidad. I was working on that with Suniti Maharaj, and we were doing the vote at 70 years of the vote, because we got the vote in 1946. I'm going through this box of photographs that was gifted to the university, to Heritage Library by Lise Weiner.
Wow.
And so it's the Weiner collection I was looking in, right? And I see this thing, and I just like stopped in my tracks when I saw this postcard, and I asked the library would they give me permission to scan it, you know? And it's Riverview Bar 1920, and it's a photograph. I think it's a photograph that was then. You know, they used to draw over photographs. You know,
Yes.
It's a kind of, it's somewhere between a photograph and a sketch somehow.
Right.
It looks like, you know. But yeah, and I'm so thankful that I have that actual concrete image of what the bar looked like, because 1920 was definitely when my grandfather owned that bar.
Right.
He came from Madeira in 1912.
Right.
And came back. He went to Madeira to get my grandmother, so to speak, and came back with her in the 1920s. My dad was born in 28.
Right.
So I know that's what the bar looked like when my dad was born.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, family history is one of the things that, you know, for a lot of people in the region, it only goes back so far. What has been your journey in finding the stories of your family history? Because it's certainly been, it's complicated, it's complex, it is all the confrontation with history, legacy, and ancestry that so many different people in the region have to confront. And certainly as a white presenting Caribbean person, you are confronting all sorts of multiple levels of legacy and history. Yeah. What has been your journey in that, particularly as a student of history? We're diving in.
I'm going to try and give you the short version, because that's a long story, you know. But in as much as I was just talking about my Madeiran side of my heritage, what's interesting is that I always only knew up to my grandparents during the time that both of my parents were alive, because my dad died in 1982 when I was a teenager, and my mom died 2005. But during their lifetimes, the only family story I knew ended at my grandparents, their parents, right? In fact, with my mom, I knew there were these photographs of her grandparents, but it was a vague sense of who they were. And on the Madeiran side, nothing. And I have, in fact, been able to do research only in the last few years, in which on my grandmother's side, my Madeiran grandmother's side, who I'm named after, I've been able to go back a few more generations and even find a photograph of her entire family in Madeira, with her grandmother in the photograph when she was a child. So, you know, to me, here's the thing about a photograph as a photographer, how much of one photo could give you a sense of yourself, you know? And I grew up with that, with a picture of my Madeiran grandparents at home, and also with my Grenada grandparents, which is on my mom's side now. So, and I always felt good, to be honest, as a child, that I had that kind of ancestry, that Madeiran side, that my name identified me clearly as that. And then on my mom's side, that there was Grenada, because I grew up going to Grenada from my early childhood. I mean, like knee-high going to Grenada. And I feel like I always therefore felt that Grenada was part of me. But in terms of ancestry, I didn't really know very much, because my mom's parents died both when she was 10. Wow. So that was the thing that endured with me, that she had been orphaned as a child. I mean, she had two older brothers. She was like a real lanyard, because her eldest brother was 20 years older than her.
Right.
Right? So she was in fact sent to Trinidad to go to school at Bishop's and board with a Mrs. Lake, who was her brother's mother-in-law.
Right.
So all of this is to say, the Grenada part, I just knew the relatives I went to see. I knew I had somebody I call Aunt May. I never knew while my mother was alive, that Aunt May was actually my grandmother's sister.
Wow.
You know,
Yeah.
in terms of the things you understand. It's only after my mother died one day And God bless my mother. She was really a prize, you know, a wonderful human. And she was a very quiet kind of, you know, she was no gallery kind of person. And when I was cleaning out her cupboard after she died, at the top shelf, there were a stack of photos in, some of them in frames and out, not a big stack. And I look at this photograph and I just like broke down because I could tell that this had to have been my grandmother, her mother, when she was in her 20s, and I felt like I was looking at me.
Wow.
And this sparked in me that I needed to really, and that I never saw that while my mother was alive, I never saw that photo. So I said I needed to find out more about this Grenada ancestry. So I would start to piece things together, and I have a cousin who I didn't know anything about other than his name, a guy called Jim Smith, who is a genealogist. And he has he has this whole blog, and he's like a serious genealogist. And through him, I started to dig, and he had done the family tree. And the family tree led back, because interestingly, my grandparents were first cousins.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Right? So my grandmother Daisy and her husband Eric were children of brother and sister.
Wow.
Right? Not brother and sister. Yes, brother and sister. So through the family tree that Jim had done, it led back to a James Smith. But question mark on that family tree, what was his year of birth? And question mark, we just had the name of his wife as Maria Nunes. Who was this woman? We didn't know. And I thought that, you know, when you reach one of those walls in researching your family history, and you think, well, you'll never get past this wall, until I got past the wall. And I only got past it probably maybe 3-4 years ago in researching on the University College of London's slave legacies database, which I realized a lot of people in the Caribbean actually don't know about. You know?
I was actually there at the launch, and that was the last time I saw Stuart Hall alive.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And one of the things that had actually upset me about that is that the one of the people who was speaking from University College London, he said this is not an opportunity for you all to ask for reparations, because, you know, we are not involved in that question of reparations, you know, because that's a completely different thing. So he sort of washed his hands of the idea that enslaved, the children of enslaved people should ask for reparations, although it was clear that people like Benedict Cumberbatch family and Cameron family and things got a lot of money in reparations. But anyway, that's an aside.
But it's actually it's quite relevant.
Yeah.
It's not an aside, really.
Yeah.
In the sense that when I went on that website, because of all these documents that Jim had found and put on the website, like wills and all kinds of things, I knew the name of the estate that this James Smith had. It was Hope Estate. Sorry, not Hope. Yes, Good Hope, right? So when I looked it up, because you can search by estate, and it took some digging and digging, because the name James Smith at that time was and still is a common name, but it was even more common then, right?
Yeah.
The long and short of it is, like, in the middle of the night, literally 2 a.m.-ish kind of thing, digging and digging, I saw the file, the record of the compensation claim for 30, I want to say it's 38 enslaved Africans on their estate.
Wow.
And that thing, boy, I just, you know, I had never considered in understanding my family tree, and that was part of my family story. I actually really, you know, of course I started to think it was a possibility the more I dug into James Smith, you know, But certainly growing up, I never considered.
Yeah.
And so to discover that James had enslaved Africans on his plantation, that really, you know, I remember, like, I didn't know what to do with myself. I didn't know who to talk to about it. There were just a few people I was able to speak to at the time. I didn't even know how to begin to work it out in my mind. And it was like a combination of feeling ashamed, of feeling, I know, all kinds of things, you know. So the question then was, where did this James come from?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And who was this Marianne? His wife. And that is where we thought we hit another wall, and you'd never find that out. And it is during this pandemic. Because I'm part of a group on Facebook, a genealogy group, out of Grenada.
Yes.
That I get tagged in a post about a James Smith. And I really have to try and give you the short version here. I have to cut to the, I have to cut to the chase. I have to cut to the chase. Because I went on like a major research expedition online. And it landed me in Nevis. It landed me discovering that James was free-colored. Right? And his signature was on petitions for the free-colored gentlemen of Grenada to be allowed to be in the assembly in Grenada.
Wow.
Found all kind of documents, right? So the first discovery was that James was a free-colored mulatto. That was discovery number one.
Right.
Right? So that raised other questions, right? And all of the questions, through a very circuitous route, connected to his sister, who was Betsy Elizabeth. His sister was married to Louis Lagrenade Jr.
Wow.
The famous Louis Lagrenade who fought Fédon.
Wow.
Louis Lagrenade, oh boy, Louis Lagrenade Jr., his son, was married to my ancestor's sister. And it is their marriage notice in the newspaper that helps me to connect all the dots. And here's the dots. That James and Betsy were the children of a woman, an enslaved woman in Nevis named Rose, by different men. My ancestor's father was the son of the planter, and Rose's father was the overseer. I tell you no lie.
Wow. Yeah. But I mean, to be honest, my family have a very similar story from the same Grenada. It's a connection that goes back longer and longer and longer.
It's blue mind.
It's a blue mind.
This is 1770, you know.
Wow. Wow.
This is 1770. James would have been born 1770, 71 in Nevis.
Wow. Meanwhile, plenty of us can't remember what we what we was wearing in Carnival 2023. Next tune.
Oh my God.
Tiwe garçon, oh man, here invader sing this love way, oh man, invader master stick fighter, oh man, hear me beat me bamboo calendar, oh man, they could bring Harvey or Cooper, oh man, tell them I would never surrender, oh man, they could bring men from Moruga, oh man, to meet me in America, oh I'm a bad stick man, and I'm a master calypso, Tell them I'm from Freeport Junction. And also a San Fernando. So I ain't afraid, no stick man. Whee!
Tiwe. Big calendar love way from the Lord Invader.
We'll come to why I chose that song. Yes, because I want to talk about that song.
Yes.
But I wanted to just say one last thing about James and Rose. And that is that the extraordinary thing that James was born into slavery. So James was not born a free man. And I actually have his manumission document of his grandfather manumitting him. And that he, as a grown man now in Grenada, and it's a whole long story why he ended up in Grenada and not in Nevis, but the point is that he himself now
enslaved people.
And it's part of the whole system.
Yeah.
But this is all of the contradiction and complexity of what it means to be Caribbean.
For real. For real.
So anyway.
But Tiwe.
So Tiwe. So I was so, because we were going to discuss this song, I wanted to make sure that I did my homework on the patois in the song. And got in touch with Joanne Ferrer real quick. And she got in touch with Namdi Hunch to find out the exact meaning. What did Tiwe mean? And it means to draw the ball.
Yeah, it's
so
like pull.
Pull,
when they say pull.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
Because, we have so many patois words become part of how we talk, but we don't always know the full meaning. And that was one I didn't know the exact meaning.
Yeah.
So I said, no, I have to go and find out the exact meaning of this word. And I love this piece of music because, everything about it, the rhythm is a driving rhythm, the piano. At that time, because this album, it's Calypso Travels was the name of it. And it was, I think, 1959 that it was released, a Cook Records album.
Yes.
Right? And the recording of that piano in that time, that piano was part and parcel of how so many Calypso recordings. And it's gone out of the sound of a Calypso, the piano.
Yes.
But I love that it's in there. And the driving rhythm of it. And the story that he tells.
Yes.
Because a lot comes out that he's a San Fernandian.
Yes.
And Freeport Junction,
Yes. And he's a champion stick fighter.
Yes.
He had a send for them in Moruga.
Yes.
I mean, it's a really beautiful, piece of music, but it also speaks to the warriorhood that existed in Calypso and the continuity from the Chantwell, which, comes across so strongly in his voice. I mean, I always think about folk singers having this particular pitch. And no matter where they are in the world, all folk singers have like a particular pitch, which you hear in the Orisha yard, you hear it in the Gael, you hear it in funerals when people are singing bongo and that kind of thing. It's a particular pitch that you hear that you don't necessarily always hear in the Calypso of now. I feel like, there's some people who capture that. Like I could say off the top of my head, I could say Benjai is one of those people. Right. Blacks is one of those people, who kind of...
Because there's an earthiness in it.
It is a rawness. Mm-hmm. It is a unrehearsedness. Mm-hmm. It is the immediacy of what the moment calls for. Mm-hmm. That, that is present in their voice, in their delivery, in the tremor in their voice, in so many things that get captured in the moment when you need that energy to manifest.
Because the singing itself is what?
Yes.
So this singing itself is a combative way of singing.
Yes.
Right? So you're feeling you're getting lashed by the words too. Not so?
I mean certainly that is a way also that bois exists. and continues to manifest in the space. So even if you're not in a gael, you're feeling the licks. You're feeling the licks. You're feeling it. You're feeling the carry. You see the carry in the delivery. You see and you feel it. It's exciting. It's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, because there's no way, when you ask me about the 7 songs, and I was like, how on earth? Because this song from Trinidad is
massive.
It's just enormous.
Yeah.
And I think we don't give ourselves enough credit for just how big our songbook is. And when you start to really dig up in that songbook, to choose 7 songs, I was like, I didn't even know where to start. I was feeling lost because I felt like I would come with 70 songs. You know what I mean? So I was like, oh, what would I choose? You know? And, and for me, I really love Invader's music. I love how those pieces are recorded because it's really well recorded.
Yes.
And I love the way the rhythm is recorded in it. You know,
Yes.
so even though that 1959, how many years ago is that now? 60 something.
60 something years.
And you know, for young people today, that to them is like ancient history. You know? But when you listen to that recording through like really good, nice speakers, you're like, wait no man. It's, you know? And what I love about it too is you could actually see the movement of a stick man in that. You know, you could see the gael, you could feel how feet move, how people adjusting, their bar holding up, getting ready. It's like you're getting ready. You know, the same thing. It is Tiwi. I'm getting ready for you. My bar is drawn. You know?
Yes.
So, and as a photographer, I really, that's one of the things I miss is going to see calendar, going into the stick fighting. Even though it's a shadow, I know of what it used to be. That even what I have been able to photograph is a shadow of a former era of stick fighting. But still, we do have great women and women around because sometimes you will see some of the women holding their own there. You know. But to me, that is one of the art forms in our carnival culture that I have felt very drawn to. So, because of course it's very compelling from a photography standpoint, and in terms of the kind of work I like to do, which is how to capture movement in a dynamic way. You know, and so it gives you that challenge, and you know, it makes me think of people like King David. You know, bless him. And one of the most beautiful moments I had of documenting stick is with him, and I have a beautiful piece of footage of him just shadowing in his backyard under the tree, and all of his foot movements. And I never forget once an interview with Desmond Noel, and he was talking about the dance and about Pretty Boy. He said, "Boy, that man dance Pretty Boy," you know? And the beauty of men who could real dance stick. You know? And
that goes into all sorts of multiple levels of conversations that we could have about masculinity and about restorative justice in the space of the Gael, and about you know, how we confront each other in a space like that, and how we take that confrontation to a next level. You know, it's on multiple levels that we could have that kind of dissecting of stick, of calendar as a form, you know.
And I mean the whole culture and community vibe that goes with it, you know. I mean, to me, the atmosphere of a gael,
totally electric.
It is, and when those drums start, you know, and when the chantwell, that particular pitch of voice, as you were saying, that you've learned to project to it, because you learn to project over the sound of all the people and the sound of the drums, you know.
And the sound of your own fear.
Because the same interview with Desmond, he said, "Lady, blood in the gael," you know, and I mean, and you hear people like in Invaders and their songs, blood in the hole,
Yeah.
and that bus head, and people who have actually, I never forget, I can't remember his name now, but in modern times,
Yes, the guy who lost his eye.
Who lost, you were there the day, it was in Debe,
Yes.
and it was one of those things, he got a very bad blow
Yes.
that night, and
Yeah.
he had like a big
Yes.
lump on his head.
Yes. Yes.
And it was one of those things where from in the stands, you couldn't actually see the blood on his head.
No.
At least I didn't notice
No,
it.
I didn't see it.
And it's only when I was looking at the photograph on my computer screen, I realized, wait no man, this guy got hit really bad. And this whole thing that, yes, it is an element of sport, yes, but there's a
But it's
real
life and death.
element, yes.
But I mean, I remember a training session with Keegan Taylor, and I mean, I'm very much a writer in that sense, and like I'm writing things in my head while I'm doing things. And I remember he lashed me real hard on my hand.
Yeah.
He was like, "Lady, I could kill you.
Yeah.
You need to be present.
That's
you need to be present in your body. You need to be physically and mentally here.
Yeah.
Because what we're doing here is not you learning how to dance.
No.
We are learning how you protect yourself, how you
Yes.
defend yourself. Because what we're doing here is not dancing.
It's serious business.
It is serious
Well, that's
business.
why they sing, if you can't play, don't
If
play.
you can't breaks, don't play.
But they also sing, if you
you
can't play, don't play. But correct, if you
Yeah.
can't,
Yeah, and I mean that was a serious reminder to me that what we're dealing with is something that is more than just playing, and I feel like for a lot of people who have engaged with Carnival for the last maybe 20, 25 years, what they understand of Carnival is putting on a costume and going and zante in your body, and that's that. Without understanding the ritual, without understanding the sacredness of the space, without understanding that, this is a space of life and death, when anything could happen. I mean, I've seen some things happen with fancy Indian dancers who drinking before they go on stage, pitch over, and, because they're not,
Yes.
they're not prepared for what is the possibility of what is going to happen.
Yeah.
And if you're not prepared, you will get up upset.
Yeah.
And worse.
Yeah.
And worse.
And I think too, one of the things from just doing research that I really much appreciate about this art form is that Congo heritage.
Yes. Yes.
That is where
Yes.
calendar comes
Yeah.
from. And and there was a time, of course, as you know, when Congo people it was much more knowledge of that ancestry, so to speak. And we
Well,
have,
I could never give it up.
yeah,
because the Congo heritage is in me from St. Vincent. And it's like as soon as, the amount of uncles and people in my lineage who used to play certain types of mass, who used to play stick, and if they hear a drum knock, that's it.
Yeah,
Fight is going to happen.
Yeah.
Fight is going to happen, and definitely the Congo is at the root and at the core of
calendar.
Of calendar.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
And sorry,
I get a sign from a
time for another song.
time for next tune. Time for
Okay,
next
okay.
tune. Etienne Charles with Santimanité. Maria, in the last few years, so we talk about past. We talk from 1770 come back. This is a real child of a rum shop conversation.
Yes.
But I want to fast forward into the last 20 years of you delving more into photography, more into documenting the carnival space. And what prompted that for you? Like which Jumbie, which Jumbie come and talk to you and tell you, so is the case?
Boy, well, the Jumbie was a little boy by the name of Anderson, who was playing Fancy Sailor with Senor Gomez.
Wow.
In a band called Something Fishy in 2008. And he was sitting down, oh gosh, wow. He was sitting down on the back of Blue Diamond's pan truck. You know, they
Yes.
just have a little truck,
Yes.
with the pans on it for it was Carnival. It would have been Carnival Tuesday. So there he is, and he was just this amazing face. He was so beautiful, you know, and he was so sure of himself. This is what was so interesting. And he was definitely less than 12.
Yeah.
Right? And I just was, you know, Abigail Hadid had very generously, she knew I was very interested. I'd started to be interested in, you know, photography more and more. And she invited me to come and join her. She was on her normal Carnival Tuesday beat. And it involved going by All Stars and then going down George Street with All Stars and, you know, Blue Diamonds and Senor. And it's thanks to her, really, that I got to know Senor Gomez.
Yeah.
So I photographed this little boy that carnival. And it was my first real serious carnival of trying to make images. I wasn't a full-time photographer or anything. And Abigail said to me after that carnival, could I send her 3 images that I thought were the best 3 images. And I was like, it's like you asking me for 7 songs. You know, how did I choose 3? And as somebody who was not truly a photographer then, it was actually a great way of starting to understand things and making me think about, you know, what really spoke to me. And Anderson did, you know. And that photograph, it remains, I think, one of my best photographs. There's just something about his beady eyes. And I never forget showing him himself. And he said, yes, I could see, because he was seeing himself in the lens of the camera.
Wow.
He said, yes, I saw myself already, you know. So it was so, you know.
Yeah.
And I took many photographs of them. But that carnival, something possessed me that has never left me since. There was something about going down George Street with All Stars, about being there with Senor and Blue Diamonds, about Anderson, about everything about that, just that one loop down George Street, across Queen and up Piccadilly,
Yes,
you know.
and that's another one of your iconic images of All Stars coming up Piccadilly.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and you see, in those days, they didn't have 10,001 toilets on the along the edge of the river.
Yes.
And it was just so beautiful. And it's a beautiful place.
It is.
You know, the whole wall,
stretch,
the whole wall along there.
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
spectacular.
So that's one of my carnival origin stories, so to speak, for myself. And it's not the only one, but it's a big one.
Yeah. Tune DJ.
Oh, but we need to say something. Oh, sorry.
I come
from the land of the giants, where passions rage and talents run riot. Oh Lord, the land where the giants walk. In spite of the slings and the arrows, when them boys walk, they cast a long shadow. Oh Lord, help me walk where these giants walk. Every day we walk where these giants walk. Every day we walk, but still we can't walk the talk. Talking. Every day we walk where these giants walk. Every day we walk, but still we can't walk the talk. I come from the land of chance, where man does do the dragon dance and cross the waters of destiny. Builders of a legacy out of nothing, they still dared and they dream to be something, shining bright for the world to see. Every day we walk, walking where these giants walk. Walking. Every day we walk, but still we can't walk the talk. Talking. Every day we walk where these giants walk. Every day we walk, but still we can't walk the talk.
Every day we walk where these giants walk. We walk, and still we can't walk the talk. Three Canal giants. But we have a story to tell about ATN.
Yes, but I guess what we could do, we could talk this one and then we come back to ATN.
We'll talk this one and talk.
Yeah, and then we come back to ATN. So the thing about why I chose, this to me is one of my favorite Three Canal songs. It might actually be, like if I was only left with one Three Canal song to listen to, I might say, okay, I'll keep this one, right? So much, I love the tempo of it, the easiness of it, you know? It's like a beautiful breeze that's blowing, this song, you know? And then, of course, well, really, the lyrics of it, it's so powerful when man do the dragon dance and, you know, cross the waters of destiny, you know, builders of dreams, you know, out of nothing to be something, shining bright for the world to see, you know? So I think lyrically, and I was asking Wendell, because Wendell has become I don't know what to say, like we were friends before, but we became, I don't know what, like, you know, fusion happened in COVID times. And he and I probably spoke daily for most of the first year. And we became really, really close, you know. And it's one of the gifts that I received during COVID was the deepening of my friendship with him.
Yeah.
And I called him up actually to say, you know, that I chose, I know I was going to be, you know, this song was going to be used. And he said, you know how that song got written? We were at San Fernando Hill and we had sung with Rudder and Stalin.
Yeah.
And he said the song wrote itself because he felt that we were really with the giants, you know? And he said the song just really wrote itself in his head.
Wow.
And it came from feeling inspired by singing with Stalin on San Fernando Hill. Wow. You know? So it was a direct response. As songs, great songs, almost always born out of some very immediate experience you had, you know? Yeah. So I couldn't talk about my 7 favorite songs or 7 songs through which I could speak about my life and my work.
Yeah.
And which makes me cycle back to the one we played before that.
Yes.
Which was Santi Manite by ATN. That was his song. I went into Cleves on Frederick Street.
Yes.
When I was teaching, I used to run away during lunchtime to buy records when Cleves was higher up Frederick Street in a little arcade, before he was opposite City Hall.
Yes.
He was in a little arcade higher up Frederick Street.
Like between
just below Park, going
just
down.
Just below Park,
Between Park and Duke, on the right-hand side if you're walking down Frederick.
Yes.
And that's how I got to know Cleve, because that was my DJ days.
Yes.
When I was moonlighting as a DJ while I was teaching, right?
So this is why you are everything Ararian.
Yes. So I got to know Cleve really well. And one time I walked into Cleve, this time he down the road opposite City Hall. I said, Clee boy, what you have for me today? And he drops this Etienne Charles CD on the counter, and he played this thing. He also get culture shock. He put 2 of Etienne's albums out. So I immediately liked the sound, right? Took them home, and I burnt a hole in Santi Maniti. Listen to that song over and over. And that song and the whole album, because I think Folklore and
it's
Etienne,
an amazing album.
And I messaged him earlier today. I said, Etienne, how old were you, when you were writing that music? And he was in his 20s. He was like 25.
Wow.
And which alone is quite incredible because it's such a mature album. And that music told me, this is a serious person. This is somebody to pay attention to. Seriously, that album, that music, and in particular, that song. Now, I've grown over time to love, I love all these songs, but, that song really is the one that made me say, nah boy, I need to pay attention to this fella. And that was 2008, that album.
Yeah.
I think I probably heard the album maybe in 2009. Or no, I think maybe around the time it came out.
Yeah.
He came to perform at Fatima College. I didn't know him.
Yeah.
And he was at his alma mater because he loves his Fatima College. And he was playing in the yard, which is actually quite a nice place inside the schoolyard to have a concert. And I took photographs. And that was in my early days of, I think it was 2010, of taking photos at concerts. And from that, I got in touch with him. And slowly, over the next few years, we became friends. And then now, that's my brother.
Wow. Wow.
And
you all have had some serious travels.
Oh my gosh.
You all have had some serious travels.
The first travels were to Costa Rica.
Yes.
That was 2015.
Yeah.
In fact, that 2015 December, we had a magical session with Robert Monroe in his porch. And that was just one of those golden moments in life when I had a one take on camera video of Etienne playing with Robert and Dominic.
Yes.
In that magical house that, it's an old Woodbrook house. But anyway, right after that, Etienne gets in touch with me and says, what are you doing Boxing Day? And next thing you know, I was on a plane with Etienne to Costa Rica. And when you make a trip like that with somebody, you figure out whether you could get along or there's no way.
Yeah, there's no return.
But there's a one and done, or whether, boy. And we just got along really well. And in fact, of interesting note, one of the things we did was we went to this little town, Cavite, on the Caribbean coast.
Yes.
Because he was researching, he wanted to research that Caribbean influence. And we met Walter Ferguson, who is the king of calypso of Costa Rica. He was 90-something at the time, 2 days ago. And he's blind, right? We interviewed him. And Etienne messaged me 2 days ago to say he just turned 102.
Wow.
He's still alive.
Wow.
Walter Ferguson. And if you look him up, he is the undisputed king of calypso. And he speaks English with a Jamaican accent and has never been to Jamaica. Because
that's where their ancestors came from.
Yes, his father worked at the border between Panama and Costa Rica. And it goes back, of course, to the Canal days, etc.
Yes.
But that was my beginning with Etienne. And that was working on his project. It was called the San Jose Suite.
Yes.
And then more recently, I was in West Africa with him twice, to Ghana, Togo, and Benin. This shirt I'm wearing is from Togo. Made by a tailor in Togo after I bought the cloth. Which is what you could do in Togo.
Which is what you can do all over West Africa. You go and you find your cloth,
you find
a tailor, they make an exquisite piece of clothes for you, and you're wearing it in a few days.
Correct.
This is how Trinidad also used to be.
Yes.
But,
So the travels have been extensive, and those trips to Ghana, Togo, Benin, actually, we'll come back to that maybe when we have one of the tracks. The last track of the 7.
Yes.
We could come back to that story. you
Yeah.
know? So
Yeah.
maybe we could go for the next piece of music.
Let's
now.
go for the next one.
I've been schooled since a tiny tot to love my roots in words, deeds, and thoughts. And I'm sure you will understand why I love calypso and steel band. Dig the pan man, pan woman, dig the mass man, the musician, calypsonian, the artist man, the dancer man, dig the soca man. In this land where the steel pan born, with love and pain, under hate and scorn, man play with pride in his heart. Yet we ignore this wonderful art. Dig the pan man, pan woman, dig the mass man, the musician, calypsonian, the artist man, the dancer man, dig the soca man. Calypso sweeping through this world. Here at home, we don't praise we own. We breathe for.
Ooh, that one, that particular line hit me right behind my chest. Here at home, we do
Praise
we
we
do
own.
our own praise we own. Ella Andel, love your own.
Wow. This song,
This song is a deep breath. Yeah.
this to me, you know, Ella's songbook is so beautiful, you know, and I knew when you asked me about this, Ella Ander's song was going to be among the 7, and the question for me was just,
Which one?
And it could have gone in so many directions, you know. And I chose this one because it's the music of this, you know. I mean, the music of all of her music, you know. But there's something about Ella's voice in this particular song, the way this song is recorded. Fortunia Ruiz was the producer.
Yeah.
You know, Lancelot Lane is singing background. And isn't that something in this time of calypso that people used to sing on each other's records and, you know... Normal. When you look at the credits on these, you know.
Yeah.
But this piece of music that Fortunia did for Ella here, taking her melody, you know, and this arrangement. I mean, the part that we didn't get to hear, when it breaks down in the end, and Professor Fillmore is playing pan and all the saxophone, da-da-da-da-da. I mean, it's just mad. It's a mad piece of music. It's just...
I mean, when last you heard this piece of music on the radio?
I don't know that I ever heard it on the radio. When I say, I'm sure it has been played on the radio. I
But
didn't mean that.
perhaps,
You know,
but I mean, you know.
It would have obviously been played on the radio, but I haven't.
I find it interesting how, you know, how we construct the idea of what vintage is,
Yeah.
or like old school calypso, and it is almost as predictable as the the 10 songs that you hear during the carnival season.
Yeah.
When really, you know, a song that was popular one carnival is part of a record
Yes.
of songs that never got played during the season.
Yeah.
And I remember there's a shadow verse, you know, he says, if you play my tunes, I'll hit from June to June, right? And, you know, that idea that so much music is created every year,
Oh, yeah.
and it is just sort of thrown away.
But look,
It is thrown away.
Look, we have the album here, right?
Yeah.
And, I mean, on this album, I mean, there were actual albums produced.
Yeah.
And this is
Yeah.
the incredible thing. And, I mean, Black Woman, Love Your Own. This was two pieces, but so often it was an album
It was
of
like 10 pieces of music.
Correct.
That somebody,
Correct.
you know, sit down and write from Ash Wednesday. They think about it. They find musicians. They work out the melody. They book studio time.
Yeah, yeah.
And this contempt that we have as Trinbagonians, that, you know, you know, you toilet paper them, you this, you that. And it's like, I see some of that contempt in the dialogue around if we should have a carnival, if we should have anything going on. And I mean, you know, like we could say multiple things about how culture in general is managed or visioned about, etc., etc. But certainly, how can we question the value that our artists bring to us in our daily existence?
And I mean, certainly when it comes to albums, like for example, where people actually produced albums and how albums are really, in so many ways, a thing of the past, just due to the sheer cost of an artist now to produce even just one or two songs in a studio.
Yeah.
But you know, earlier, when we opened with that song, Last Like the Landlord Nearly Killed Me, that's on a 10-track album, Le Jazz Primitive. Side A is, you know, 5 songs from Rupert Clemendeau, and the other side, 5 songs from John Buddy Williams, you know.
Yeah.
And so often, as you said, songs that get overlooked. This song of Ella's, Black Woman, was, of course,
huge tune.
huge. So the B-side often, not that people didn't know it, but it gets overlooked. And so often songs, big songs that end up being maybe your favorite more than the hit, you know, but you have to be a real music pyong, you know, to have had the album.
That's a great idea. Short drop, take note, B-side is the next,
Yes.
the next thing.
Yeah.
B-sides.
You know?
We only playing B-side recordings.
I have a lot of agreement from the
Something, yes. The universe agrees.
The parrots agree.
The universe agrees, you know. But I just, you know, but this song of Ella's, boy, her voice on it, and you know, I wanted to take the opportunity in this conversation to, you know, to big her up.
Yeah.
Because she's special, you know. She's one of our treasures.
She's a true treasure.
She really is. And I think in terms of voice, the gift of the voice, you know, in the world of humans who have ever existed, she is one of those people who have a very special, rare kind of person, a very special, rare kind of voice, you know. That's how I feel about her voice, you know. And so you know, we have, and so that was my way of we have to love our own, and love your own, you know.
I want to talk a little bit as we talk about Ella. You know, Ella is very much associated, or because of the work that she's been doing in the last 10, 15 years in recording songs to the Orishas. I wanted to talk about your encounters with the Orisha yards, with those sacred spaces, and documenting those spaces. You know, particularly in a time when we are still struggling with the idea of what is the role of non-Christian religion in our space, you know, and how that is also tied perhaps to the ritual space of the carnival.
Yes. Well, you know, it actually starts with her, because in 2011, I had this extraordinary opportunity. Cats, Japanese cats, of Yoichi cats.
Yes.
Cats in my messaged me to say they were doing a recording with Ella at UTT, and did I want to come? That he had spoken to her, it was okay. And I was like, of course. And I spent 2 days, two nights at UTT filming and photographing Ella. And I remember I could not get her, like her voice was like it went somewhere down in my cell, at the cellular structure inside of myself. I actually couldn't get her voice out of my head for a long, long time, not just days. And it was one of her albums, one of her Orisha albums. And that, I've been, of course, hearing the music sometimes, because already you know, she had had enough albums out by then, because it's really extraordinary, and a tribute to her, how much she invested in doing that work. And so I was already hearing that music, but now I was hearing it up close, and I was there with Junior and Redman, right?
Yeah.
And feeling that music and being there and seeing that creative process. And that is what was the beginning of my interest, you know. And then, strangely enough, I hadn't gone into an Orisha yard yet, but I went to Haiti and I was in a voodoo yard. And when I came back from Haiti in 2014, I said to myself, I cannot reach Haiti and reach in a voodoo yard and be in Trinidad and not reaching an Orisha yard. And I made a commitment to myself then, in Haiti, that had to be what I had to do when I go back to Trinidad. And that was the impetus to actually go beyond the music, which I was already beginning to really have ears for, because of Ella, but to go now into the space.
Yeah.
And the first place I went was actually into a Radha yard, you know, and between documenting, starting to get to know the Antoine family, you know, Henry and Vero and Uncle Vernon, you know, and then through Andy Patrick, you know, my good black Indian friend, and who is himself a Baba, and, you know, who is a most extraordinary person, you know, and I think a very underestimated person in my view, you know. I started to have more and more understanding and go to, and I think, you know what it was? One day I was invited to go, I got a call from Oba to say they were having Obatala Festival, and that was the first time in Woodbrook. And here was I watching Obatala Festival in the heart of Alberto Street in Woodbrook.
Between like Three Mass Camp.
And people driving around normal. This is Woodbrook. And this beautiful procession in the road down onto Arapita Avenue. Quiet happening, whether it was a Saturday or Sunday. It happened on a weekend.
It's a Saturday.
Yeah. And that was like, that was the first time now, in terms of Ifa Orisha, that I had that experience. And well, I was like, wow, no, you know, and for me, it always was the music. My entry point was music, and it's really the drums, you know, and it's why I chose the last song that we have in this our little evening, which is 2 songs away, I think, but it's the drums, and it's the spirit of the drums, and that really spoke to me from day one. And that I felt connected to. And then, of course, I just started to go.
Yeah.
I went more and more places. Sometimes I would say, you know, till I go in, you need a ride, you know, kind of thing. Or you would call me because you realized I was going.
Yeah.
You know, and I to
Ocean Festival
in St. Libya.
Yeah.
You know? And then, of course, the extraordinary thing was I immediately realized that the people I knew in Carnival were the people I was seeing in
the Orisha yard as well.
In the Orisha yard. And, you know, the Ogun Festival, you know, by Ogun Boale, who, of course, I knew in my sport life as Lester. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So all of these lines of connection started to come to me, and I felt actually immediately at home.
Yeah.
So I felt it was a really good and affirming thing for me, because, you know, I mean, I'm coming from outside of the tradition, but I always felt welcomed, you know, and I felt that I needed to be there. that it was important not just from a documenting standpoint, because I recognized immediately I did have a responsibility and I wanted to document this for other people to see what's happening right under their nose that you may not be noticing. But I also realized it was something that for me personally, spiritually, about just making that journey and opening myself up to understanding traditions and making connections, starting to understand things in a much bigger way.
And you know, I think about this particularly, you know, from my travels to like Venezuela, Brazil, Cuba, where there is more, how to say, integration, right? Where it is not a strange thing to see a white person catching power in a Santeria session.
And Brazil,
right?
I mean,
in Brazil, it is certainly the
normal.
Right? In Venezuela, I mean, I've had multiple experiences with Venezuelan people here saying Abu Raboye, Abu Shishe to me on the street because they recognize me as one of them, right? And I guess I wonder what it is about the history of hair. Perhaps it is just because there is such a small minority of white presenting people or people of European and beyond heritage. But also there is also a reservation that we still have between each other. There is well, that is your thing, and this is my thing, and that is Indian people thing, and this is First People thing. And you know, yes, we enjoy each other, we enjoy the space together, but you know, to say that we really are invested in understanding the ritual side of things, in understanding the spiritual side of things, I don't know if we have reached to that level yet.
No, I don't think we have, you know. And I mean, and I don't say that it's not a criticism, or it's an observation about who we are. And I mean, and even for myself, I feel myself at the beginning of so many journeys, you know. I feel like there's so much for me to learn. Like the more I learn is the more I realize I don't know. You know, all I feel like saying these days is I don't know. I really don't know, you know. And for me at a personal level, I've always felt the importance of wanting to understand the people around me and why people believe what they believe, you know, and having respect for that. And to me, that was the way of really building bridges and actually really having understanding, the deep kind of understanding I think that there was at a certain time, maybe that's only nostalgia thinking, that there was more understanding in the past, you know. Certainly sometimes you hear it in the music of a man like Shorty. You hear things that show deep understandings. He's a great example, perhaps, of that.
But let's listen to that tune now.
Yeah.
Oh Lord, from the time Olatunji perform in Trinidad, I have a little sister, like them drums and she mad. As she hear drums, she go prance, raise up she body and start to dance. Rolling up she belly, whining like a Swiftie and singing in Swahili. Here she don't mind what they say, and then I play the rookie for Africa, Naive and Puma and Baba. This music is sweet, beat, Mr. Drama beat. This is real bacchanal, just like we carnival. La 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 la. La 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 la. Don't mind what they say, don't look a boy, back to Africa with the drums of the forefather. La la la, la la la.
San Fernando. Anytime I drum beat, she like a mad woman on the go. We carry she to brain specialists, we carry she to psychiatrists. But a fella from Aruga who know better says drum spirits from Africa. Yeah, she don't mind what they say. And then I'm going to Rudy for Africa. Naive and Kuma Ingu Baba.
This music too sweet, beat. It's like a beat. This is red bacchanal, just like me carnival.
Big tune. Big tune.
Another B-side.
Another B-side tune.
Because that's on the great Endless Vibrations album.
I mean, that album really is. we have a well-worn copy here, but that album is really a watershed. Watershed album.
It is.
And of course,
call out the tracks on that album.
The great Art Decoto Orchestra.
Yes.
Endless Vibrations, Zena, Weeting, Drum Spirits, True King of Carnival, Love the High, Fluting Way, To Kill a Cat. Cat. Not because Bajan girls soul calypso music.
But that song,
the world's most sexiest calypsonian. Oh gosh,
Shorty,
listen,
Lord, Shorty. Tell you, that
what
song.
What a guy.
Yeah, boy. And I mean.
But that song, Drum Spirits, yeah.
I think, I guess it's a real musician's kind of song.
Yes.
It's a very musical piece.
The complexity of it also is like, okay, what's going on here? What's going on? It really is a very sophisticated piece of arrangement.
It is, and the phrase and the phrasing of the melody.
Yeah.
Have a fella from Aruga. Da, 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 da.
Yeah.
It's all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And I don't know. This is one of those songs. I just listen to it over and over and over. Sometimes I play it loud and dance around the house with this song.
Yeah.
And that drum spirit from Africa, right? Which is what this song is. That spirit. When Olatunji came to Trinidad, not Olatunji, the Calypsonian folks.
Olatunji,
the original.
Babatunde Olatunji.
The original Olatunji, right?
A proper Shango man who come from Nigeria.
Correct. Let's just be clear so this generation knows that, okay? So, because it's important to say these things,
of course,
that's where Olatunji gets his name, our modern day Olatunji.
Yeah.
But this song, especially since I've had the opportunity to go to Ghana, Togo, and Benin, not once but twice with Etienne, thanks to Etienne and going to document his research. This song took on another level of meaning for me about these drum spirits from Africa. And because what Etienne is doing in this research, because the pandemic interrupted the project for him, right? But it is researching music along the roots of slavery, And I mean, the kinds of sounds that we heard, especially, I felt so at home in Benin.
Yeah.
And the rhythms, it was like, I just felt immediately at home there. And you could tell that this is where our music is coming from.
Yeah.
And I would have to say, where I feel, I myself, I really feel that, I felt that connection and I could feel that ancestry, honestly, through actually going. It was a very emotional thing for me at a very personal level to go.
Yeah.
And so this song has that thing about being possessed by the music, is that it's the music that has brought me to understandings about myself, and it is through the music that I've been able to kind of construct who I am, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And understand my family heritage, understand why I like the things that I do. Because all of this music that I like, nobody told me to like it. You must like this music. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's things that I felt naturally
drawn to.
And when you're standing up in that Orisha yard and those drums start to play, and when I was in Haiti and I heard those drums, there is something very, very powerful And those things have really impacted on me a lot.
But you understand why they had to ban it, right?
Yes.
You understand why they had to ban it.
Because it could really take you. It really is very powerful.
Yeah.
And I mean, So that drum spirits, I was so glad to be able, because I know it's a song that I don't think it's a widely known song, unless you're a Shorty. You know, Shorty people.
Unless you're a Shorty fan, you wouldn't know that song.
No, so
it's not going to get included on a retrospective album.
No,
but it is a Watershed song from a Watershed album.
Yeah. And you know what you were saying earlier? I wish, with this whole thing about local content on air, on radio, let's talk about just radio. How we still actually, I mean, there are some stations that are playing more local music and some that are devoted entirely to the more modern forms in our music. But we have so much music in our songbook, right? Going back to the first recording, Mango Ver, right? 1912.
Lovey String
Band. We have over 100 years of music in this place. And we could have radio where at any time of day, you could be hearing this music, or you could be hearing music from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 70s, 80s, 90s, right? You could be listening to so much. I mean, so it's not just, for me, this is not some nostalgia thing in my head.
No.
The songbook is big. And there's so much that we could learn about ourselves.
And there's also a lot of range.
Huge.
Right? And I feel like this is one of my observations about where the music is right now. It doesn't seem to have a lot of range in terms of topicality, in terms of
of the musicality of it, the way it's,
I mean, I observed that there were two songs named after women. I was like, oh, is this like a trend that's coming back, like naming songs after women, and then I started going through in my head, like all these songs named after women over all of this time. But who is contextualizing Jolene and Cassandra in that way?
Right.
That's not really happening because, in a way, there isn't the research that's going on. It's like, my father used to listen to this. Okay, so my father had 3 records. These are the 3 records, and this is what local vintage calypso music is, right? And that's that. And it's very narrow and it limits us because we don't get the full range of our powers.
Correct, because and we have all of these powers that are there. And I think that today, I mean, not just young people, but even not so young people actually don't really know the breadth of music that exists. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I wanted to choose that John Buddy Williams era too as one of the songs today, because that era, what I would call our big band era, is amazing. I mean, it's not just them. And then in the era of Sparrow, when you listen to Sparrow's, the orchestration in Sparrow's albums. And the other day I made myself have a Sparrow day. And I just listened to Sparrow after Sparrow after Sparrow. And the music.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I mean, that's just, we could go on and on.
Yes,
and
we
on.
could. We get a wrap-up sign from Short Drop in the corner there. Next tune, Short Drop.
Smokey Joe play a big time man. Purple velvet and shining brass. He rides through town on a golden throne. King of the road in a world of his own. He worked all night and day as the weeks went past.
pounding and beating out metal for fancy mass. He had no job, but he used to bet on the horses, cause dock work was hard to get. But his luck was bad, he was in debt. For Smokey couldn't buy a cigarette. Expensive cloth he had to get on trust. Oh my lad, cause playing mass to him was a definite must. Smokey Joe play a big time mass, purple velvet and shining brass. He ride through town on a golden throne, king of the road in a world of his own. Yes, he ride through town on a cardboard throne, quite sure that the first prize was his own. I'm the king, he thought, as he mounted his stage. Oh, my lad, the Lord see my picture on tomorrow's front page.
So the last tune, Smokey Joe, by the late great Andre Tanker. We're not gonna cry, right? We're not gonna cry, but you know,
Wow.
I have never met somebody who everybody has a good thing to say about. Everybody has a good thing to say about Andre Tanker.
Andre boy. You know, Andre Tanker, for me, like the first thought when I had to choose my 7 songs, the first thought was Andre Tanker, right? And Smokey Joe isn't my favorite Andre Tanker song, but it's a deeply meaningful one for me, you know, because of the work I do, you know. And so I said, well, okay, we're going with Smokey Joe, you know. But Andre is the only, I would say it's the only time in my life I ever felt like a groupie following somebody from concert to concert. Wherever he was playing, I didn't care where it was, I was going, right?
I used to be there too.
You know? I mean, it was like,
Yeah.
I was truly a groupie.
Yeah.
And, you know, I never forget, I have a great Andre Tanker story to share with you. When he had the Children of the Big Bang album, and it was about to come out, it hadn't come out yet, I was in the car park of LSD Plaza, when it wasn't as big as it is now.
Yeah.
It was the original iteration of the plaza.
Yeah.
And he hailed me out. But at that stage, I knew him because I had taught at Providence and taught Sue Maria's daughter. And I'd got to know him a bit better from interacting with him because
As
of
one
her.
of the parents. Yeah.
So he said, I have something I want you to hear. And he said, what are you doing now? He's in the car park. I said, hey. He said, come home by me. Andre Tanker, I followed Andre Tanker to Mackenzie, place where they live in Maraval. Went upstairs and on a big boombox kind of thing, Andre played the mixtapes for me from Children of the Big Bang. Yeah. First song he played was Here and Now. And I couldn't believe that I was sitting down in Andre Tanker's home listening to a preview of Children of the Big Bang. When I was one of those people who knew this album was coming, and we couldn't wait for it because he hadn't released an album.
Yeah, in a long,
100 years,
long
right?
time, since maybe Steel Band times.
Correct.
Yeah.
So it was so eagerly anticipated that this album was coming out. And I just felt, I knew it was like one of those experiences in life that I would never forget. That he saw me in the car park and he said, come home by me. And that was so Andre. And he genuinely wanted to know what I thought. And just as a, you know, and not that I was any person of import, you know what I mean? But it was such a human thing. He was creating something and it was about to come into the world, you know?
Yeah.
And he wanted to share it.
You know, but talking about Andre and his humility and his, you know, his humanity, so much of that is captured in the lyrics of Smokey Joe.
Oh my God.
And
it's a whole story, it's a book, it's a movie.
It's a movie. Somebody need to make a movie about Smokey Joe. Because Smokey Joe is every mass player that we know at this point.
Absolutely.
Who don't have enough money to buy clothes, so they get it on trust. Who can't get work down in the dock or wherever it is.
Who never win a prize for anything they did.
Never win a prize, but they know that they have to play this big mass, purple velvet and shining brass.
Riding through town
on a cardboard throne.
King of the world.
In a world of his own. And I mean, you selecting that as the name of your book is also tribute to these mass players who are mostly, in a way, invisible. We don't see this. That is not what we think of as mass now. It's like the late great Nari. He say, no, not everybody wants to wine. It's only Jam supposed to wine. It's only Jam Melassie is supposed to wine. Yeah. But now, there's a kind of uniformity. I also remember Andy Patrick saying to me that, or was it Nari, talking about every feather that a warrior has is representation of a fight, of a confrontation, of a battle. And it's like, so we have all of these people prancing around with millions of feathers who don't know nothing about dance and fight.
No. I mean, this was the thing. This was why that song, which I had, of course, for a long time, and I love the harshness of the rawness of the opening, because it's a live version of Andre singing it, right? But this Smokey Joe, I realized to myself that who I was photographing was all of these Smokey Joe, And so when I was working on putting my book together in late 2017, early 2018, I knew to myself, it came to me one day, that in a world of their own, and I shared it with Marielle Brown and Melanie Archer, who were the publishers for Robert and Christopher. And I was so glad that we all agreed that was actually a really good name, for what, in a world of their own, is really, they invite us into their world, and we are so privileged to be able to witness the world of a Midnight Robber or Blue Devil or Fancy Sailor, Fancy Indian, a Moko Jambi, all of these forms, these real art forms, because to me, these are carnival artists.
Yeah.
And that was what was so clear to me in doing the carnival work, in seeing the little Anderson in his, with his powdered face and his fancy sailor costume, that this was carnival art, and it's really been relegated in the way in which carnival has evolved into one big street party. Really is what carnival has become. And I like to party too, I like to lime and fet.
Yeah, but everybody loves to fet,
right,
but there's always more to it than that.
But that art. Yeah. And I think to me, it was obvious to me, at least for my eyes and my taste, that where I was seeing art in carnival was in these traditional forms. And these people who were making their mask no matter what. And it's not easy for them, because the way in which carnival is structured very often, like when you have what they call the traditional competition on a Wednesday, there often isn't proper accommodation for them to get ready, because of what they're doing is a performance, And when you see what happens to Moko Jambis, where very often they don't even think about, well, how are we going, what do we have to put in place for them to be able to get ready, because they have to get up on a height,
Yeah.
So we say we love these things, but we don't really think about what goes into what these people have to sacrifice, all of that they invest into making this art that helps us to make us feel good about ourselves, right? So we kind of living off of what they do in terms of how we feel about our culture. When we want to showcase carnival, what do we like to do? Take a picture of one of them and put it in the front.
Yeah.
When you want to launch carnival, what do? You go and call a few of them because it's actually something to look at.
Yeah.
You know, it's actually
Yeah.
really something. So I find we have a very dysfunctional way of relating to our traditional carnival forms. And I really feel that what they get is really just a lot of lip service. The prize money that's allocated to them in carnival is shameful. You know?
It's obscene.
And it's really disrespectful, in my view, because I think if we had a whole different approach to that, we would see much more creativity coming out now, because what's happening to those traditional forms is it's become so expensive to make the costume. Those same feathers, it's prohibitive.
Yeah.
And when people criticize some of them and say, well, but you just do over your costume and you make some adjustments to it and bring it back out, it's because for some people, they just actually, it's prohibitive. Take Black Indian, the kind of Black Indian masks that Nari and Boise used to be able to make, big masks. You ask Andy today, there's no way that they could afford to make that size costume anymore. It's just impossible, right? So the economics of the whole thing has affected the traditional forms. It's not that people don't want to make the masks, but I think if we had, but if in the structure of how Carnival was, if we had a grant system for Carnival artists to apply for grants
And not prize money.
Correct, right? Then I think we would see, because the creativity is there, the knowledge to make the masks is there. But I think the whole structure of Carnival does not, the way it's presently and has been for a while done, we will not really enable the best of ourselves to show. This for the Smoky Joes to really shine.
Really shine.
Yeah.
Really shine.
Yeah.
Maria, we could sit down here and talk whole night.
We could.
We really could. But I just want to thank you for sharing the music, your images, your thoughts, your fears, your truths, your stories with us. And, you know, as we go into another season of Tabanka, may we find space for solace and for, you know, memories, good memories to prevail.
Yeah, and you know what? Like last year, what did we do when it was?
Yes.
Didn't we bounce
I'll
up
see
each
you
other?
at the Baba Green.
We bounced up each other in the savannah by no plan.
Yeah.
But those of us who felt we just had to go and watch that Juve, experience that Juve moment, see the sunrise over the Belmont and Laventil Hill there, and say, well, we just be quiet in that moment. Because, you know, there's a deeply, we didn't even touch on that deeply spiritual element of Carnival. And for me, that's what the Carnival space is. It's a deeply spiritual space for me. So I know in some way, somehow, I will connect with that spirit.
The Jambi.
Yes.
The Jambi.
Yeah.
The Jambi lives. The Jambi always there.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And walk good. Stay safe in these times.